In the late 20th century, the world of fighting had become stuck. The old kings of the ring, the boxers, were trapped in a system that everyone knew was broken. A labyrinth of corrupt promoters, meaningless titles, and a gnawing sense that the best fights would never be made. It was a world that had become too complex, and ultimately, too unreal to believe in.
And boxing people can get mad all they want, but sorry, their sport has taken a nosedive. It has.
How many boxers could the average person walking down the street that does not consider him or herself a hardcore sports fan, much less a boxing fan, name?
Yeah.
Is it two?
The bell rings on any of the fights. I can't stand it. Just look at that, for example. We're talking about the top guys in the world. None of them are fighting each other. What is this?
I think boxing is now just kind of more of a soap opera as opposed to, you know, kind of what it used to be as an actual sport.
Yeah, that's a good word.
What emerged was something raw and seemingly more honest. A new kind of combat with no rules, held in a cage. It was terrifying, chaotic, and for a moment, it felt like a glimpse of a truer world.
I think that boxing is great, but you match two great boxers together. No one gets knocked down. No one gets cut. No one gets knocked out, and it leaves room for the UFC.
It's kind of a silly agreement. Say, like, we hate each other, we're going to fight, we're going to duke it out man to man, but we're only going to use our hands. That's it. What ultimate fighting is, it's the actual sport of fighting. It encompasses all aspects of fighting: ground game, kicking, punching, elbows.
This is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. As real as it gets.
But whilst many of us sought comfort in this new world, those who had created it became a part of the very chaos the audience had tried to escape. This is a story of a marriage between sport and state, and the hypernormalization of MMA. In his book, Everything Was Forever Until It Was No More, The Last Soviet Generation, Alexei Yurchak coined the word hypernormalization. The book describes the various paradoxes of Soviet life during the 1970s and 1980s, and despite both civilians and politicians being aware the system around them was crumbling, they resigned to maintaining the illusion of a functioning society, regardless.
The Soviet Union became a society where everyone knew that what their leaders said was not real, because they could see with their own eyes that the economy was falling apart. You were so much a part of the system that it was impossible to see beyond it.
In 2016, a documentary released by Adam Curtis, also called Hypernormalization, examined how governments, tech salesmen, and financiers have taken advantage of the general population's state of mass confusion for the interests of corporations. Much like the Soviets in the 80s, Trump takes advantage of a chaotic world by offering a simpler one, with simple answers. In this world, a significant percentage of the population will blindly trust you in a hope to cling to anything consistent, even if it is consistently fraudulent. Someone like Donald Trump can therefore paradoxically become seen as more honest, so long as they tell you just how disingenuous they are.
And the reason he's loved is because people in Ohio have never seen somebody like him. He's what I call an honest liar. He said, "I know the system is rigged because I use it." I said, "God damn." And then Hillary Clinton tried to punch him in the taxes. She said, "This man doesn't pay his taxes." He shot right back. "That makes me smart." No one had ever seen somebody come from inside of that house, outside, and tell all the commoners, "We are doing everything that you think we are doing inside of that house."
In the UK, Boris Johnson appealed to the populist sentiment that elitist groups were to blame for the struggles of ordinary people, whilst being a member of elitist society himself.
To read them. On working class men, Mr. Johnson, you said they're likely to be drunk, criminal, aimless, feckless and hopeless, and perhaps claiming to suffer from low self-esteem brought on by unemployment.
He then used this unwarranted favor to mobilize the conservative working class into voting for Brexit, using misinformation about immigration and NHS funding as his propaganda.
He lies to his party leaders, he lies to his employers, he lies to every single person that he ever comes into contact with. And yet today you can still turn your telly on or your radio on or open up a newspaper and find somebody pretending that this time he's not lying.
Donald Trump used the same technique in his presidential campaign, despite openly using his money to influence politicians in the past.
I give to many people. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them, 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me.
He convinced everyone that he was on the side of the working people by using the same language as Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was a left-wing populist movement against economic inequality and the influence of money in politics.
Money that the corporations are wrongfully using, I wanted it to be taken out of their hands and put it in the right hands.
Republicans heavily criticized it as being a socialist initiative that unfairly sought to limit the financial freedom of the wealthy. So it was strange to now see Donald Trump using that same rhetoric on Republicans and having incredible success.
Trump attacked his Republican rivals as being all part of a broken and corrupt system, a politics where everyone could be bought, using words that could have come from the Occupy movement.
So did Trump keep true to his promise not to allow the wealthy elites to influence politics? Of course not.
The Oval Office, how the president has just completely redone the Oval Office. It's beautiful.
And make it a lot easier for you, and I'll be doing that 100%.
Former US President Donald Trump has attended the UFC in Florida days after he was formally indicted in New York over alleged hush money payments.
The truth is, Trump was always a friend of the wealthy elite before he was ever a man of the people.
And pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
President Trump must win to preserve the Constitution.
He is charming. He is able to convince people. So he tells everybody what they want to hear.
So how do you know this?
Much like Johnson, Trump was able to manufacture an image of an honest con man, and both can be seen as symptoms, not causes of a fake world. A world that keeps us sufficiently distracted and entertained, whilst our leaders exploit us and pursue atrocities overseas.
Was that in an age of individualism, what made people feel secure was having themselves reflected back to them, just like in a mirror.
By the end of Curtis's film, he claims that Trump was able to make journalism powerless because the paradoxical relationship between him and his base made fact-checking pointless.
He and his audience knew that much of what he said bore little relationship to reality. This meant that Trump defeated journalism, because the journalists' central belief was that their job was to expose lies and assert the truth. With Trump, this became irrelevant.
One of Donald Trump's businesses that was struggling before he got into politics were his multiple casinos. To increase profitability, Trump began hosting major boxing events and saw the potential in the UFC as another possible attraction. Ever since, Dana White has been enamored with Donald, and in many ways began to idolize him.
He saw a lane for himself and his sport to flourish. He used Donald Trump and Trump used him back. They even kissed Trump's ass by running a documentary about the 45th president titled Combatant in Chief.
Combatant in Chief, a 30-minute film that focuses on the former president's long-standing relationship with the UFC and the fighters that support him.
I'm in the tough guy business. And this man is the toughest, most resilient human being that I've ever met in my life.
However, Dana did say, and this was in 2016, that if Trump asked him to be chief of staff, he would leave the UFC and go be chief of staff.
You see, what Dana White wanted was to be the central figure of his own hyperreal world, just like Trump. His persona as the blunt, swearing, tell-it-like-it-is everyman is presented as a carefully constructed character. He is the human face that makes the corporate machinery feel authentic. His video blogs and press conference outbursts are not just promotion. They are a performance of realness that distracts from the impersonal corporate decisions being made. Today, the UFC has explicitly become a platform for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, causing a noticeable absence of balance both in its media and fan base. This doesn't mean the UFC hasn't always been right-wing coded. Even in the early days of the UFC, there was no mystery about which demographic made up the majority of the UFC community.
Are a bunch of skinhead white guys watching people in the ring who also look like skinhead white guys.
My guess is that as long as I can continue to get young white guys to watch, they're gonna be there for a long time.
But the UFC as a company did not bend over backwards for the Republican Party back then, at least not as blatantly as it does now. The UFC of the early 2000s represented something very different to what it does today.
I was in this because this was cool and irreverent and different, and yeah, a little edgy, and it's not going to be PC all the time, but it seemed different and new and exciting, and you got a glimpse into a different life and people from all over the world. It was crazy.
The UFC wasn't sold on its explicit politics. but more so a counterculture that would welcome in anyone willing to go along for the ride.
At our events, we're going to be the sport for everyone in a way that you never imagined. And if you want to be a part of this, we want you here.
MMA is in a different place when it's telling certain fans it doesn't want them. Because I was there for the days when they would take anybody. And especially if it was like a strange demographic, like, you know, grandmas or so. Oh, they would have been delighted.
If anything, once White and the Fertittas took over, by today's standards, the UFC went woke.
He would have said it completely different. There's nothing wrong with having a point of view. Everybody's crying, oh, it's freedom of speech. And yeah, okay. Work at any company anywhere in the world, okay? And give your opinion in an ignorant, you know, where you come off sounding like an ignorant bigot. See how long you last at that company.
Fighters were held to a code of conduct, and there were numerous examples of Dana handing out punishments to athletes who breached it. Whilst being interviewed on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, Matt Mitrione made the following derogatory statement regarding transgender fighter Phelan Fox.
That's ridiculous. That is a lying, sick, sociopathic, disgusting freak.
In response, Dana handed Mitrione an indefinite suspension and made it clear that the UFC was not a place where bigotry was tolerated.
I guess to a point he's right. You just can't work here if you want to say stupid stuff like that. You can say whatever you want. Not in here though. Now you gotta leave. And he would have said it differently. There's a way to voice your opinion without sounding like a bigot.
This was not an isolated incident either. Miguel Torres was even cut by the UFC after making a rape joke in a tweet.
That tweet makes no sense. And the fact that you would say it was a joke bothers me even more.
The UFC had to be this way. Given the aggressive skepticism about the sport's place in society, the UFC needed all the allies it could get. And so Dana enforced a strict code of conduct that limited their freedom to say and do bigoted things.
You know, and people want to call it, oh, we're bowing down to political correctness, or we're doing this and that. No, we're not. We're being civil human beings is what we're being. There's a group of people that doesn't like that word. Okay, then don't say it.
What is also important to remember is this policy actually worked. Both Mitrione and Torres would eventually return to the UFC, and both would be grateful not just for the chance at redemption, but grateful for the learning experience that being held accountable gave them.
I'm actually, it's remarkable how easy life can be once you stop being an ignorant fool, you know?
Positive out of a negative. I did something negative and I had to make something positive out of it. You know, I had to educate myself, learn how I hurt people and why I hurt people, and I did that.
While young right-leaning males still made up the majority of the fan base, the code of conduct meant all were allowed into the UFC community. A typical UFC fan in the early days of the sport was someone who gravitated to the subversive. A modern UFC fan gravitates towards the conservative.
It really wasn't until 2016 where it became explicitly coded as kind of Republican aligned when Dana White spoke at the Republican National Convention.
The second that Trump came into power, it gave White the green light he and his company had been waiting for. Dana tore up that code of conduct, and all of a sudden, all those principles went out the window.
Free speech. Gonna control what people say. Gonna tell people what to believe. Gonna tell people. I don't tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them.
So now there are no leashes. What kind of free speech grew out of this new policy?
All your teammates is a bunch of
Get up in the crowd. Come down here and get us on your ass bitch. Americans, we need to go back to like taking women out of the workforce. Maybe that's where we f***ed up, you guys. We let women vote. No offense.
I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy based upon my own research, not my public education indoctrination. I really do think before Hitler got on meth, he was a guy I'd go fishing with. He fought for his country. He wanted to purify it by kicking the greedy Jews out that were destroying his country and turning them all into gays.
Here is Cunningham posting a Nazi doing a Sieg Heil on the top portion and Youngins supporting human rights on the bottom portion. He would caption it, "It is better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep." Cunningham would pose in front of a Deus Vult flag with his arm in a very, very familiar pose. They know that a certain subsection of their fans align with this and like it. And it shows that Dana White has no balls on this. He doesn't care to confront this. He doesn't care to nip it in the bud, take it head on. Instead, he's just going to allow it to fester. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
If your free speech model enables people to use slurs, but it doesn't allow them to critique the promoter or make even fair criticisms of the way in which they're leveraging their power, you don't have a free speech model. You have a slur speech model.
Dana is not a man of principle. He does not have strong convictions about free speech or have any values beyond what can make him money. Now, many MMA fans absolutely love this, but they tend to miss the hypocrisy of it. Sure, Dana is making bigotry permissible for now, but if at any point he felt like that was hurting the UFC's bottom line, you can bet your life that woke Dana would rise from the grave to enforce the code of conduct again in a heartbeat.
You know, sorry's great. I love a sorry here and there. Sorries are always good, you know, but it's easy to say sorry. But when you gotta start forking out some cash, you start remembering a lot more.
What had truly happened here was simple. Dana saw a gap in the market. Whilst most sports would lean into progressive politics or remain apolitical, the UFC would cater to the right-wing demographic left behind.
Oh, okay, there's a lane here, and there's an opportunity to be the voice and the sport of this entire community that maybe feels like the other sports entities are not serving them or in line with their beliefs.
But dismantling the code of conduct was just one step in Dana's process for creating his fake world. The next was the dismantling of traditional MMA media and journalism, creating an echo chamber that remained neutered and harmless to him by restricting who is permitted to ask questions at press conferences. Dana has made a special effort to suffocate any media members or journalists who might be critical out of the industry.
Dana White is there, some other members of his team are there, and he just says to me, "You're out. Get out of here."
Josh Gross can't be employed necessarily in the industry. Steven Morocco just got let go.
Didn't Loretta Huck get driven out of the industry?
Got driven out.
This means that the UFC fan base never sees Dana being made to answer any real questions from someone pressing him on fighter pay or monopolization, for example, but instead, nonsense questions from fans and influencers.
If you're going to have a press conference, then it's for the press. If you're going to have a pep rally, then it's for the fans. You cannot mix the two and call it one or the other.
Then you're crazy. Brand you wear?
Back of the shoulder.
In the back of your shoulder.
Yes, sir.
Why?
Clout for fun.
When you drive out the real media and make it harder for them to do their job, you want influencers lined up that won't rock the boat.
But as an industry, MMA journalism is dead. It is formally dead. You can say goodbye to it. It doesn't exist.
Look at who's in attendance at these events. Look at the kind of questions that are being asked at these events. Are there good journalists? Yes. Do they ask good questions at times? Yes. But this ain't 2015-16 when the very best, who are still covering the sport, were going to almost every single pay-per-view, every big show.
As Dana now tries to extend his world into boxing, we can see just how uncomfortable he has become answering questions about his business practices. When confronted by an actual boxing journalist at the Canelo v. Crawford press conference, we saw just how much Dana needs his usual bubble of UFC media members to insulate him from meaningful questions regarding his exploitation of fighters.
So my question to you is, why then do you want to make sweeping changes to the Muhammad Ali Reform Act that is meant to protect fighters to bring about a business model that currently has your company already paid out $375 million in antitrust lawsuits and has 2 potential pending class action lawsuits on the way as well?
Listen, if you want to be an asshole, let's do it in private and we can do an interview.
Yes or no?
If you want to showboat, I get it. If you have questions for these 2 that are fighting on Saturday, that's a different story.
But if a boxing press conference isn't the place for a journalist to ask about the promoter's nefarious intentions with the future of the sport, where is?
The changes to the Ali Act is a massive story heading into this new promotion, TKO Boxing, Zuffa Boxing. Where else but there? And I thought the exchange, and in particular Dana White's response, was very telling. Telling of what he hasn't been challenged with over the last few years, and telling of the way in which he views media.
But Dana said up on that stage, you come and see me and we'll have a sit-down interview. So I presume that will happen.
It hasn't happened yet.
Okay, well that's a shame.
And Dana's plan to move his business practices are very real.
Let's go over to topic number 4. This was big news on Wednesday. The California State Athletic Commission unanimously recommending the passage of the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act
to a very controversial response, mostly because there were 0 professional boxers present on this sort of Zoom conference call, but there was a lot of MMA fighters, alumni, representatives.
Now, this has no actual legal effects on the act passing, but what it does do is manufacture consent for the very real changes Dana White and TKO want to make to the legislation that currently protects boxers from promoters like him.
TKO has been begging for these changes so they can fighters over with their new league.
The changes Dana wishes to make are concerning the Muhammad Ali Act, which safeguards professional boxers by banning exploitative practices, promoting financial transparency, and ensuring fair competition. It prohibits promoters from serving as managers, restricts contract lengths, and requires promoters to disclose key financial details such as income from ticket sales, broadcasting rights, and sponsorships to the boxers involved. This is very different to Dana's business model, which allows him to serve as president, promoter, and belt distributor, which has helped him build a monopoly over the entire sport.
That's the problem with UFC. There's no competition. So these young MMA fighters that are coming in, they're forced to sign these contracts where that really, if you look at it properly in terms of the revenue of the show, especially when they get to a certain level, it's an awful commercial contract for them. But it's their dream to sign for the UFC. And guess what? There's nobody else. That's not the same in boxing.
Whether Dana will successfully embed himself in the world of boxing remains to be seen. But UFC fans today are not concerned with such things as fighter pay, common decency, and the business practices that exploit the very athletes they claim to be fans of, because the world Dana has created doesn't require that from them. Dana White and the UFC's owners did not just promote a sport, they created a simplified, compelling, and commercially viable, hyper-real version of fighting for the public to escape to. They built a cage, both literal and metaphorical, where they controlled everything, while the messy truths of the business were kept outside. What Dana has done, much like Trump, is created a fake world for fans to exist within, a world devoid of reason, accountability, and hypocrisy that serves him and the UFC investors at the expense of both fighters and fans alike. The final stage of creating Dana's new, simpler world was to homogenize the audience.
We kind of already knew this, right? But MMA is firmly a right-wing sport, right? And again, you can like that or you can hate that. I'm just trying to make a judgment call as best I can about what the actual truth is.
I feel like I've seen a lot of, not just from the UFC brass, but the community get very eroded by this right-wing presence.
It's about entire spaces that have been taken over with this culturally right-wing stuff. And the epitome of that example is UFC.
The UFC took a number of steps to make left-leaning fans know they were not welcome here. One such tactic was bringing out Donald Trump during a UFC event whilst during his run for president.
But once you start to bring not the president, but a candidate into events and parade him, octagon side, well, you've said to every fan that you may have had that has a difference of opinion.
Another method for turning off left-wing fans was, of course, the abandoning of the code of conduct.
If you had a son and he was you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak fucking man, dude. You're part of the fucking problem.
Okay, so you've essentially made it inaccessible.
That's right.
To people that aren't down with that. So if that is a conscious choice, that's all well and good. But I mean, you gotta hope that those people can support there's a lot of people that are making the gamble that a very specific segment of our population is going to prop up their entire brand.
Events no longer simply showcased fights, but served as sports washing for Donald and his cronies.
By Trump rally standards, it's been a pretty good fight card. I don't know how traditionally good the fights are on his rallies, but... Oh, sorry, did I say Trump rally? I meant UFC event. They're impossible to tell apart at this point, but nevertheless.
Pays homage to Donald Trump, who was sitting cage side, and it wasn't just Donald Trump. It was Donald Trump and the Republican Avengers.
The UFC also used to hold events and release content celebrating Pride and Black History Month. However, in recent years, the company has drastically cut back on this. The UFC still maintains a Black History Month presence on its website, but in recent years, such material has struggled to make it onto any UFC broadcasts, and when it did, The UFC chose to tell Michael Chandler's story of his experience adopting black children, rather than having any black athletes inform us of the challenges they have overcome.
UFC, no, it was Michael Chandler, a white guy, in a story where they positioned his adopted child as a token, essentially, to get off this feel-good story to appease the white audience.
It's amazing. It's so stupid that I feel it's deliberate. Like it's very difficult for me to just say, oh, this is just a simple oversight, because I think if you put an iota of intelligence into this, into trying to think this through, it sounds like a really bad idea.
Like I said a second ago, it was a comfort piece for white people, the white audience, where they didn't want to get smacked in the face with some real black struggle shit.
Pride Month observance also appears to have become less prominent, with the UFC seemingly posting almost no content in celebration of the LGBTQ+ community in the last 2 years. This is because the UFC has fostered a community that isn't just indifferent to gay people, but actively dislikes homosexuals. When the UFC disingenuously pretended to stand with gay people in the past, you could already see the fan base pushing back on social media, begging Dana to not let anything progressive into their safe new world. When wearing one of the Pride-themed fight kits, UFC fighter Jeff Molina was taken aback with the tidal wave of hate that came his way from the fan base.
In 2022, people would be a little more like open-minded and not pieces of shit, but I guess I was wrong. It's just crazy to me. Like, people were saying some like crazy shit, and it's like, dude, what would you do if your kid's gay? Like,
all of this wasn't some happy accident. This was a deliberate attempt to alienate left-wing fans from the sport and media, in order to gain full control over the narrative and reduce the number of dissenting voices speaking out against UFC business practices.
We're going to be kind of like a lifestyle brand. We're going to be a brand for a certain kind of demo. And we know that what we're going to do is we're going to lose a bunch of people that we had, but we're going to make a gamble. And that gamble is, even though we're going to lose a bunch of people, we are going to keep a bunch of people who are smaller in stature or size, rather. However, they're going to be much more loyal. Calculation. I don't know if that's a bad call. It might be the right call as a business for their interests. But what I do know is it's a different sport now with a different audience making a different claim. I think a lot of people just left. I think that, again, like, you know, the sport is not exactly rolling out the red carpet for a certain kind of fight fan anymore.
The left became so absent in MMA that many of those left behind found themselves with no real adversary. This meant that fake left-wing discourse had to be created, or those remaining would realize they were in a bubble. Since nothing riles up UFC fans more than the mere mention of pride, this tends to be incorporated into these fake stories in some shape or form, because it serves as not only excellent rage bait, but also creates the illusion of discourse. Here we see a post claiming that Patty Pimplett is refusing to support an upcoming Pride-themed fight night, claiming in a social media post that the sport should not focus on political issues. But, of course, the UFC isn't holding a Pride event, and Patty never made such a statement. But it served its purpose in making those who read it believe there was some debate actually happening. They were simultaneously upset that Pride was invading their space, and emboldened in thinking a fan-favorite fighter confirmed their right to be angry, despite neither of those things actually happening. A similar story covered a fairy tale that Ilia Topuria had been fined by the UFC for refusing to post about Pride Month on social media. Are we starting to see the pattern? Despite being a blatantly right-wing company, the narrative being sold is that they have been somehow infiltrated by woke leftists who are now making fighters support gay people. This is all made up, but people will scroll past these headlines and genuinely believe there is real discourse happening in their community, when in fact, without this fake news, they are nothing but concordant. Much like in the real world outside, the left gave up on seeking radical change in the environment they once coinhabited.
The radicals and the left-wingers, who 10 years before had dreamt of changing America through revolution, did nothing.
The left wing in MMA has also retreated, and those remaining who previously would have sought to change the sport and its culture became spectators. Unlike the right, the left-wing members of the MMA community had nothing to organize around, causing them too to slip into a different kind of nihilistic individualism.
Was the rise of a new, powerful individualism that could not fit with the idea of collective political action. Instead, Patti Smith and many others became a new kind of individual radical. who watched the decaying city with a cool detachment.
The scope of MMA, like, hey, normal people, look at what's happening over in MMA. You know, we tried that, and they get horrified by it, and then they just check out. Like, they don't actually want to do anything to, like, they're not invested in the sport in a way where they want to clean it up or whatever.
Many real topics that used to be at the tips of everyone's tongue suddenly faded away from mainstream MMA discourse. Long-term health insurance, retirement plans, additional weight classes, employment rights, increased revenue sharing amongst many other high hopes were dashed. We are all simply products of our environments, and the environment Dana fostered in his new fake world made it impossible for dissent to breathe. The MMA community became exactly what the environment dictated them to become: hyper-individualistic conservatives besotted with the perceived strongest man in the room.
Powerless. There's a danger to this kind of dictatorship. I don't know that the audience cares, though, as long as they get their pound of meat.
With this new philosophy taking a firm grip on the community, Dana could exploit the fighters with impunity.
No, it's just like, do what we say, don't question things, keep your mouth shut. You know, I think we're just treated like meat.
So imagine that. You're killing it. You're just destroying everybody in the division. And next thing you know, the CEO or the boss who goes, I'm gonna get rid of that fucking division because it's not bringing any money.
Nothing, no bonus, no nothing. You know what I mean? Like, my mom is dealing with 2 forms of cancer. They're plastering her on the TV screen, talking about my mom, which I didn't ask them to do. There's no woe is me.
The UFC wants you to do all this stuff for free for them, and they give you, like a per diem for $250. It's like, man, it's like, this just isn't cutting it, guys. You know, I can make more money doing my appearances on my own than doing stuff for you.
Why do they have a problem paying someone what they're worth?
I don't
that
know.
shouldn't be an issue. That should be like,
They pay you whatever they want to pay you. They let you pretend that you're negotiating while you're not negotiating.
MMA, looking at the revenue of the show, and you are the key driver for that revenue, and going, hang on a minute, how comes there's $10 million in this show and I'm making 500 grand? This doesn't make sense.
In modern UFC fandom, you're left with the option to shut up, drift right, or get out. UFC commentator Joe Rogan is a brilliant example of this, as someone who used to make statements like this.
I think I'll probably vote for Bernie. I think he's looking out for the interests of the working people, and I think he wants people to have a better life and do better. And I'm all for that. And if that means I have to pay more in tax, like people think, oh, you're a socialist. I've heard people say that. Oh, you're a socialist, bro. Like, first of all, he's not even a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. It's a different thing. I would like to spend more in taxes if they could fix inner city communities and take these poor neighborhoods and throw a fuckload of them. Spend more, you Republican piece of shit.
Now making assertions like this.
There's socialism that could work, right? There's a version of it that can work and make it more equitable for everybody. But the end of that is always one thing. It's totalitarian control over what you say and do.
Joe went from refusing to endorse anybody for president on his podcast to being convinced by Dana White to endorse one of the most controversial political figures in the last decade.
Were you nervous about endorsing Trump or no?
I usually try to stay out of it.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was getting urged to by Dana and there was quite a few people.
This shift in perspective is not unique to Rogan, of course. Millions of people in Western society have been enticed by populist and reactionary political figures. But the need to get Joe on side was of greater import than your average sports commentator. Whilst the percentage of early UFC viewers overlapping with Joe Rogan podcast listeners is unknown, to estimate the number being around 80% would most likely be low-balling it. So much of fan opinion surrounding rules and regulations, both inside and outside the cage, were simply parroting talking points they had heard Joe say in the past.
That if a guy like that, look, I'm not a fan of stand-ups. I don't believe in them. I think a round is only 5 minutes, and if a guy like Sean Sherk can get on top of you and hump you for 5 minutes, tough. Because this one, you can throw your body weight into it, and it's a more natural movement. This is an unusual movement. What a crazy difference that calf kick has made in MMA over the last few years.
How important is the plunge pool, or is that just a trend? Is that Zumba for today?
No, it's real. But when I'm high, it's like I could feel like where it connects to the bone. I feel everything. It just makes you more sensitive about what you're actually doing.
For a period of time, and arguably still to this day, The average Joe Rogan listener was able to be spotted from a mile away.
Chalk protein. Never understood the whole vegan thing.
I think Elon Musk might be an alien.
We should try DMT.
I kind of like MMA now.
It is hard to imagine a scenario in which Dana could have ever created the new world he wanted without also getting Joe Rogan on board.
Right?
Dana White made the Trump thing happen, for sure.
He was
trying to get me to have Trump on in like 2017.
Bro, you would hear rumors of that in the distance.
Bro, he would call me up. He'd call me up. Joe, listen, the president wants to do your podcast. I go, you mean Trump? Thank you very much.
I'm a big fan, and thank you very much. It's been an honor. And
it's been an honor to have you on as well.
Between having Trump walk out at UFC events and Joe Rogan to interview Donald, Dana did everything he could to help get reelected.
His image was in tatters. The UFC helped rehabilitate him. He ran back for office, and they helped convince young men to get him back into office. This is their reward. This is his reward to them.
In 2026, the UFC is scheduled to host an event at the White House. One can assume the site fee and expenses will be paid for by the American taxpayer under the America 250 campaign. If Dana doesn't wave them as a favor to his old friend, what is supposed to be a celebration of America will more accurately be described as sports washing for the MAGA movement.
Utterly vindicated. It's on his fucking birthday, and people being like, this is about... I can't even say it without laughing. This is about the history of the country. This is about the office of the president. The fucking guy is throwing himself a birthday party. And the reason why you know that's true is that his supporters love this idea for that reason.
The event will be the public marriage between sport and state, with us being forced to watch the consummation. We have retreated into pure spectatorship, experiencing the new normal. But was it just violence the UFC is desensitizing us to?
You know, keep that stuff at home. Religion, politics, all that stuff.
People, this is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family.
All is well. There's nothing new
on the eve of the election, Rogan formally endorsing Donald Trump.
A Trump mass deportation because we have no choice. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator.
You're better off this way.
Our lives are on the fucking line. Healthcare needs to be taken care of. Our fucking health needs to be taken care of. I get emotional still when I say, there's a piece of shit that could die. Hey, good morning, baby. Yeah, those are my 10 miles in the book, baby. I don't believe I've ever had a traumatic brain injury from a fight.
You'll be okay. You're better off this way. In a bed, locked inside.